In this InspiredInsider.com interview, we talk with Bryan Kreuzberger, founder of Breakthrough Email. He talks about 3 big low points in his life, one of which we can all relate to. Do you ever remember being worried about being picked last? Listen to what he says about it. Also, he talks about how he was able to get over something that he was holding on for the longest time. It's such a powerful and personal story. You have to listen to this. Also, he even goes step by step of some of his email of how to get to the big names fast so you can make more sales. That and much more. Jeremy Weisz here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders how they overcome big challenges in life and business. Today we have Bryan Kreuzberger. He's the founder of Breakthrough Email. It teaches you how to get any meeting with cold email to land bigger sales. We all want that. His training gives you what you need to generate leads and sales for your business. He's used these exact strategies to land $15 million in contracts from companies like General Electric, Best Buy, MasterCard, Home Depot, and many more. More importantly, his students have used Breakthrough Email to generate over $5 million in the last 8 months. Bryan, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm pumped to be here.
Me too. And we're going to talk about mindset and what drives Bryan, because without that internal drive, all of the breakthrough strategies and everything else goes second. So I want to hear what drives you and what people can do in their own life to kind of fuel them, to actually use your systems, right? Because you have to put it into effect. And before we talk about some of those things, a fun fact about Bryan, which I've found with a lot of high-level entrepreneurs, sometimes he's a bit of a thrill seeker. He's done cage diving with sharks, helicopter skiing. And what were you telling me of what that does to you when you're in the moment with that?
Yeah, so your question was, are you an adrenaline junkie? And what I said is, like, when I'm doing those activities, whether you're skiing or biking or kite surfing or whatever, when you're in the moment, you're like singularly focused. There's nothing else going on. You're just doing that action. You can't really think of anything else, and just living that experience. And it's just something that I really enjoy. And if you can get the endorphins going, get the blood pumping, it's just something that I love to do.
Yeah, I think something I need to remember in my business is just stay singularly focused, because I'm all over the place sometimes. So thanks for the reminder on that. So I'm really excited to hear what drives you to tap into your success. And so tell us what you were telling me. There's 3 big low points that's driven you from when you were younger. What was the first one?
Yeah, so as a kid, I remember this point where I was in, I think, first grade, and we were playing kickball and we were picking teams, and I remember being on this side of the kids are picking. There's a couple of kids picking, and it was kind of a sunny morning. It was like early in the morning, and they were picking the kids, and I wasn't picked, and I wasn't picked in the next round, and I wasn't picked in and I'm kind of like looking around like, hey, I'm way better than these kids over here. Like, why aren't, and these guys want to win, why aren't they picking me? And I ended up getting picked like second to last or last, and it's kind of looking at all the other kids like they want to win. I know that they're picking to win, and it's like, this is wrong. Like, this is fun. Like, this is so wrong. I don't get that they don't understand this. Like, how can they do this to me? Why would they do this? And when it was my turn to kick that game, I mean, do you have any idea what was going through my mind at that point?
It's painful.
No, I was going to kick the shit out of the ball.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to let this happen again. I am going to, just try and kick the daylights out of this ball. And, and I ended up doing well, but it wasn't like I got the home run or anything at that point. But I remember thinking, this is so wrong. I'm just not going to let this happen again. And, I made a choice right there that, I'm going to be really good at sports, And, so this doesn't happen again. So I'm, accepted by these kids. Fast forward to fourth grade. I remember we were going in from lunch, and one of the girls in the class, her name was Lindsay, and I think it was a Friday. She was going to have a birthday party, and it was going to be a sleepover party. And she had left the invitations on everyone's desk, and like all the other kids in the class were like really excited. It's like, oh, they start talking about their invitation, and it was boys and girls, and it was co-ed, and it was like, it was this big thing, and I wasn't picked. And I kind of looked around in the room, and I looked at all the kids that, like the kids that were cool and were picked, and I looked at the kids who weren't picked, and it was kind of like the nerds or the dorks or the whatever you want to say. And what I said is like, I don't belong, right? Like I don't belong apparently I don't belong with the cool kids, where I kind of thought I did. I don't belong with the guys going into the library. And I was trying to find out who I belong, who it was that I should hang out with, or who, and really it was the kids who were kind of the jocks, right? Like jocks not accepted and cool and popular. And so I made another choice at that point, where it's like, I'm going to be really, really good at what everyone cares about, right? So for me to be accepted, and I didn't have this like master plan. It's just like, I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm going to get really good at sports or really good at school. And so I from there I just started getting like straight A's.
So those two things fueled you and motivated you to, one, just want to be the best athlete and best person in sports, and to also do really well in school.
Yeah. So I ended up from there, I think, before that, I'd get A's and B's and C's and whatever. But after that, it was like straight A's, through high school. In high school, I got 1B. I was like third in my class. By the age of 14, I was, the fifth best swimmer, in the country. And, I was in the paper going to national meets, was an All-American in high school. But what I would do is I'd throw it in people's faces, like, "Hey, do you see me in the newspaper? Do you see how great I am? How'd you do in that class? Oh, I got an A. What did you get? Oh, you got a B. And so what people did is, they really resented it. And what I was trying to do is I was trying to get, looking back now, I didn't understand all this, at that point. But I just wanted to be accepted by the other kids, and it was. That fast forwarded all the way through college. Ended up going to University of Arizona and swimming for University of Arizona, and really that theme, even into New York, even into my career up until probably 2 years ago, that was a theme of my life. I'm going to be really good at whatever's important to everybody.
Do you think that need to be accepted has actually made your breakthrough email? Because that's what breakthrough email is about, right? Getting accepted, yeah, really. Getting that response.
Is it what made the breakthrough email?
Or like, can you think of something that's baked into the breakthrough email that's a component of it, because of almost stemming back to, you're trying to get accepted by some big, it's not like you're reaching out to anyone, you're reaching out to CEOs, CFOs and people like that. What's baked into the breakthrough email to get accepted?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, you want the response, right? So what's baked into it is, you're going to get a referral from somebody else who, has and you're going to get referred to the person who can make a final decision and say yes to your project, your idea, or whatever it is that you're pitching. Mm-hmm. The emotion behind being accepted by your peers and wanting to be, part of the group, or wanting to be part of like that clique. I don't know if there's, crossover, but we're dealing with people, and, people are tough to read, and they also, they have their own needs. And ultimately, I think part of it is that I would tell somebody, like, let me tell you how great I am or everything that I'm doing. And that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear about, something great for themselves. And that's kind of, one of the paradigm shifts and even sending an email, people will write from the perspective of how great their company is or what it is that they do versus what they can do for the other person.
Got it. And there was another influential moment when you were a sophomore in college.
Yeah.
What happened with that?
So I was swimming at University of Arizona as a sophomore, and my swimming had kind of plateaued. And what I did is I worked harder. And we'd have 5 morning practices at about 6:30 in the morning, and then we'd have an afternoon practice, 5 afternoon practices at 4 o'clock, or sorry, 2 o'clock, and I just grinded it out. I just worked harder. I lifted more. I swam more. I swam harder during practice. And I got to the point where my blood pressure was high, my heart rate was high. The doctors didn't know what was going on, and I just couldn't go any faster. Right? It's like 50 meters freestyle, 100 meters freestyle, 200. You train for 3 meets in the year, and if you don't go faster and you put all this effort in, it's just mentally, it destroys you.
It's crushing.
And if you do that, if you do that for a year or two, and you're watching your peers get faster, and they're going to nationals, they're going to NCAA's, they're going to Olympic trials, they're going to Olympics. Like my buddies, won gold medals, broke world records in the Olympics, and you're keeping up with them in a lot of places in practice, but you're not getting that payoff. At the meet, it's brutal. So I ended up going to my coaches. I quit, and this is something I've been doing since 8 years old, and it's probably 19 at the time. So 11 years full time. 10 practices a week, and I made a decision like I'm not going to work that hard in anything ever again. I'm not going to invest so much of myself where the failure would mean so much. So what I from there, what I did was like, what, I'm going to do what's important to people, but I'm not going to make the effort. So it was all about like, how can I hack my way through college? And it was kind of before the idea of hacking was even around, or at least in popular culture. So this is like 98, and I would not go to class. So like I'm gonna, I'll study for the test the night before the test, and I'll get a B. And again, I'd throw it in the faces of like the other kids that went into class, like, oh yeah, you got a C, I got a B plus, and I didn't even go to class. So it was like, I'm going to do well, but I'm not going to make the effort. And that went into New York City, or it went into San Diego. I'm going to work, but I'm going to work from home, or I'm going to work outside, or I'm going to surf at lunch. And so I wanted this lifestyle, and it was great. Like the lifestyle was great, but ultimately the things that were fueling it were things that I had no idea of. Like that was just how life was. It's how I was. And it wasn't until 2 years ago where I realized, I got to a point in New York where I made a bunch of money, was working 3 hours a week, and I was hanging out in coffee shops with nothing to do, and I was bored. And at that moment, I took a landmark education class, went through this exercise to kind of understand, when when the first time something was wrong, which was the time I was playing kickball, when there was a moment where I don't belong, which was in 4th grade, and and then later to understand kind of the other elements of like I was on a hamster wheel that I didn't even know.
So why is it a bad thing that you're working 3 hours and making a lot of money though? Like you found a way, like that almost. I can see you were more efficient because you don't want to work as hard. I mean,
yeah. So like everyone else had to go to work, right? And I was also afraid of whatever was next, and I wasn't taking action. I wasn't doing other things that I couldn't enjoy, or I wouldn't enjoy the other stuff that I wanted to do. Whether I go kite surfing and everyone else has to go to work, so they kind of just resent it, like. Well, good for you, but some of us have to work, and I had a girlfriend at the time who had to work, so it wasn't like I could just go travel the world like some of the guys out there who they'll just kind of have their their muse business, and then they'll go off and do other things, and ultimately I wasn't really giving back, so I kind of looked at like if I were to die today or tomorrow, Like, what does it all mean? What impact? Like, how have I moved humanity forward? What have I done with my life? It's like, oh yeah, he swam, he went to college, he, worked, he sold some stuff, he was successful at it, and he's gone.
Yeah. You feel like you weren't meeting your true potential, I guess?
Um, that's not how I thought of it. It's just like I wasn't doing anything that really made an impact on the world.
Yeah.
Right? I wasn't really helping people.
Yeah. So what about now? So now you know this.
Now I'm helping people.
Right. What drives you now? I mean, because some people will be like they have a lot of money in the bank, they have time. What drives you now to keep going and to help people? I guess what's something that you've heard that's impacted someone else, one of your students maybe?
Well, I think fundamentally, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is like I want to. People have great ideas, they have great businesses, they have great products. We always had great software, but we didn't know how to take our software and bring it to potential clients, have them become clients and customers, and get referrals, and in a way where it's predictable and systemized. So bridging the gap between your great thing and people who can use it. If you don't have that, if you don't have that skill between here and here to sell, to find customers, to find leads, to close business, then it doesn't matter how great your product is, right? So the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is to help people connect with people that can buy their product, can partner with them, can say yes to them, because every idea, every entrepreneur, they have this idea that's going to make something better, like something in the world is better. Now, I know how to do that as well as anyone out there, how to connect with the customer, how to send an email to get a meeting, and if I can share that and people can use that and they can use it this month, this year, or for their career, and they have that skill, then they're kind of unstoppable. If you can build a product and you can sell it to customers, there's not a lot left, out there, at least for an entrepreneur. So that's the thing that really motivates me. And then, kind of looking at a bigger picture, all those people making an impact on the world, who knows what they're going to do with their career, their businesses, or who knows what they're going to do for their clients who are going to make an impact on other people, and how that, could potentially shift people. So that's the reason I got into this business and started this business. And to me, it was like, if I could do anything, what would I do? And that to me sounded exciting, coaching and teaching people. My mom's a teacher. What motivates me now is what I'm excited about is looking at the numbers, looking at how everything, kind of like the jigsaw of the whole thing, and understanding how people learn in a digital environment, and also just copywriting, human psychology, that stuff. That's the stuff that I really enjoy now.
What about, so, I mean, with Breakthrough Email, it wasn't always easy. What happened when you first started the project?
This is Brooklyn Roasting Company. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. This is great, shout out, great coffee.
They're not sponsoring the interview, but
no, they're not.
I'll contact them now.
You could email them.
Right, yeah. I'll use your email system.
What was your question?
When you first started Breakthrough Email, it wasn't always easy. It didn't just launch right away. What were you thinking? What were your thoughts around that?
Well, when I first launched, I started out with just I started teaching people for free, and I just wrote up kind of a one-page template, or a two-page template, which I just kept people kept having questions. I just kept adding to it. So now it's a 9-page template. You can go to breakthroughemail.com and you can get the cold emailing template right there. There's 9 steps to the email. But I just started sharing it. And and I still do, right? I still share that template so you can understand most of the main concepts of how to approach the cold email just out of that template. And what I found is that under me being able to do it and teaching it to somebody and the questions they had were very different. right? So they wanted to know, well, who should I write? Well, who's the best company for me? How do I find the email address? What subject line do I use? Do I use a signature? Should there be a link? And there's answers to all those questions. So I just kept adding and adding and adding all the way to, I have students now who they're just crushing it. But we're much further along in the process talking about, at the end of the deal cycle, and there's 3 decision makers and working those deals and getting the deal closed and, and actually launching the business and setting the expectations and, much further along, the sales cycle.
Right. I want to hear about Mark.
Okay.
Specifically, and also because Mark told you heard from Mark when you were feeling a little bit down, I guess. What happened with Mark, or what did he say to you?
Well, so there's 2 different times. So one is when I was putting together all the content and putting together the digital training course on cold emailing. There's times where you're working on this thing and you're not making any money on the idea because you have to create something. So, but I was teaching people, so I would hear back from people and they'd say, hey, thanks so much. I sent 3 emails. I got 2 responses. I've been trying to reach these people for 6 months. It's it works like a charm. I can't believe it. I was shocked. Thank you so much. And I wouldn't get emails like that in my normal day-to-day, as a seller. And it was those emails were very few and far between, and I get maybe 1 a week, and there's somebody I didn't know, and that to me was awesome. That was my mission, right? That's why I'm doing this. So that stuff would fuel me, and I'd show my wife and hey, if anyone ever emails me and it's a really thoughtful email, I'll show her because it makes her happy. But with regard to Mark is one of those guys who he just takes action, right? It's hey, Mark, this is, he's he'll have a question on, he had a question on trade shows, and how everyone goes to a trade show and they all want to just talk to the speaker. He's well, how do I differentiate myself? Because I'll ask him a couple questions, and then the guy's his question was, how do I follow up after getting the card from the speaker? And really, the error happens a lot earlier. But what he'll do is we'll talk about it because we have a weekly call. It's a part of the 50K club, so it's a private group of several of my best students. And then he'll go and implement it that week, and then we'll talk about it the following week. So he takes action, and he's closed hundreds of thousands of dollars in deals. He has this SEO display company, and he's just on fire.
Yeah.
But he takes action.
Yeah, that's a huge taking action. And I have a bunch of questions. I want to hear your inner drive and beliefs, but I have to ask this because it's coming up for me. What is a good subject line? What's one that you found that worked really well? I don't love to stick on tactical things, but when you said that, my mind just kept pondering. What's one of the good subject lines you found that was working?
You gotta go to breakthroughemail.com and get the template. The important thing with subject line is, I think, that it has to be congruent with the whole email, right? I don't like the kind of bait and switch, hey, this is the subject line, and then you get in the email, and the email's about something totally different. I like to have something that's really approachable, and I don't go into save $50,000 on your insurance spending, or kind of broadcast subjects. The subject line we use in a cold email template is appropriate person. If you're going cold into a company, you don't know who it is that you should meet with. Even if you think you know who it is you should meet with, and I would think I knew who the guy was at these, McDonald's or Home Depot or GE or whatever. I do all the research. This is who is always my buyer, right? It's the VP of marketing or the VP of whatever, and this is who I should talk to. And once I'd get there and I met with the guy, it's we knew within 10 minutes, he wasn't the guy who was going to, to buy my product or my service. So you kind of have to take even what you think take that a backseat and then test it and have them dictate to you who the appropriate person is. From there, once you know who the appropriate person is and have a referral to get the meeting, then you ask for the meeting.
So someone could just put in the email, the subject line, appropriate person, question mark, or something like that?
Yeah, but like go read the template because there's so much more to it.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to make you boil down, give you a quick and dirty answer. I know that's not always the case, but
Yeah, so the subject line is appropriate person. The first sentence is I'm writing in hopes of finding the appropriate person who handles blank. It could be market, something vague like marketing. Like at McDonald's, there's 500 people to handle marketing at McDonald's. I also wrote to your boss, your boss's boss, and this other person. So you tell them that you wrote other people. You don't CC them, and really, you're getting really clear. Like I'm checking it on my phone. Here's my phone. I'm looking at it. And in the subject line is appropriate person. First sentence is I'm writing in hopes of finding the person who handles this thing. I also wrote to these people. If it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. And then you go into your email pitch, and then you repeat the call to action, which is, if it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. If not, who's the appropriate person for me to speak with, right? So, appropriate person, subject line, first sentence, last sentence of the email. And what a lot of people do is they make lots of mistakes, but they have multiple requests. We really only have one request, and all I want is just the name. Because once I have that name, I will use that name as a referral into the meeting with the person who's the appropriate person.
Right. I mean, the purpose of this, obviously, I want to get into the inner drive, but I had to ask that. And if anyone needs to see the details, obviously go to breakthroughemail.com. But I want to know, you weren't always this smooth. Tell me about the first meeting you ever did.
So I'm laughing because we kind of did a pre-interview to talk about what we're going to talk about, or at least, kind of the concepts. But, and that's one of the things that I think, Jeremy, you and I met from, doing a pre-interview on Mixergy.
Right.
And, we didn't cover a lot of what we covered, which is some really, like, as you can talk to it. I don't have to, talk about what it was, but we're talking about some of that stuff. But my first job was cold calling, and I would call like VPs of IT, CIOs, CTOs, directors of IT for an Oracle consulting company. And my second job, I would have to find the leads, but then I'd also go in the meetings and try and close the business. And I was going in on one of my first meetings, and I was with my boss. We were in Newport Beach, California, and we were meeting with some lawyers who did a bunch of marketing. And we had like a creative services firm. We do a lot of websites and branding, things like that. And we're meeting, we're shaking hands, and the lawyers look at us and like, hey, is one of you nervous? My boss is this New Zealand guy. He's like, no. Why do you say that? It's like, oh, because one of you's hand is really sweaty. And I'm like standing there, like my hand is like dripping, like I could like you see like the beads of your forehead, it's like coming out of my hand. I'm like wiping my shirt, like sweating through the armpits. I didn't have a clue of what I was doing. I just like trial by error, and that's kind of how most sellers or most people just kind of learn by doing in selling. And there is a process, and there is a sequence, and there are experts at it, and there are people that have done it for years. But I was so effing nervous. My hand was sweating. I would put like in my pocket, I would put napkins, because it's like, okay, it's like I'm gonna have to shake their hand. And for months, that's it's like I'm trying to like these clammy hands, just trying to like warm it up for like that shake. And because in the beginning that was like all I did, right? It's like, hey, nice to meet you, and then I'd just sit there, and my boss would kind of run with it. But
that's such a good story.
I was just so nervous.
That's such a good story.
I mean, it's like burned in my brain. There was like two lawyers, and then my boss. I don't think he ever said anything, but this guy just totally, he's like the worst. He just like totally called me out. We never got the deal. Never did any business with him. He was a lot of free consulting.
So, what happens, Bryan, when you have breakdowns in the business? What do you do?
Yeah, so I think now, so I'm always looking to kind of refine my process, and as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and I don't have a partner, I, you have breakdowns, you have things that just like they hit you, and it's just like, oh man, like, the website's down, like at least you can deal with that, who to go to, but there's stuff that just hits you, and you're just like, I don't want to do it today. I don't want to work today. I just, like I have to like come up and, be excited and ready. Like even today, like I'm like, oh, I need to crank some coffee because like I need to be there with Jeremy. So the people that, I'm here with, because if I just kind of slump in my chair and don't really care, I had to be there. I had to be ready. So I work with a coach, and she's a life coach, and I've been working with her for about a year and a half. And anytime I have a breakdown, there's a couple things I do. But if it's like a major breakdown, we create the system where I'll just text her, and all I'll write is like SOS. And she and I know that like something hit the fan where I need to talk to her, right? And I kind of I need that insurance policy of I need somebody to talk to, because I would have breakdowns and then not do anything for a month.
What would be an example of like a breakdown so people kind of visualize? Like you mentioned, like the website goes down. Is there anything else that people should watch out for, or know when that stuff comes up, I should talk to someone just to kind of sort things through, not just try to do it myself?
I mean, it could be anything. It is like the breakdown, as I define it, is something that's keeping me from like taking action. Or at Landmark, Landmark is an awesome class. But what they say is it's a loss of power, right? So there's something about that thing that you're emotionally responding to, and you're not able to deal with it. You're not able to, just take the emotion out of it and just say, hey, it is what it is, and I'm going to do this, now. Breakdowns that I've had, like one breakdown is like an employee that just wasn't working out, who...
It's a tough one.
That's been a whole new skill set. If anybody's out there that is an expert at hiring, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at Bryan at breakthroughemail.com, Bryan with Hawaii, but, or just anybody out there that, wants to reach out. But, that's something that like, it's a whole new skill set of like, how to learn, because it's really important that, to me, like once I give something to somebody, that they can just go out and do it, and they come back and they do it, and I don't have to follow up with them, and I don't have to spend more energy, trying to chase them. Right. But, breakdowns with that, breakdowns with like a payment system, just stuff that like just kind of like stops you in tracks. Yeah. And, I probably had to do it like 2 or 3 times this year. Last year, we didn't have kind of the whole systems. We like created the system together because it was like I needed something where I could like reach out to her, where it was like, it's almost to a point where like it's such a thing that like I can't express it. I don't know how to communicate it. Like I just need to be like, reach out to somebody who has my back. And and that's something that has been, as an entrepreneur, has been just so great to have somebody that like knows my business, knows me, knows what I've got going on and what I'm working on, and we can continue the conversation. We can keep moving the conversation forward, and who doesn't judge me for how it is that I feel about certain things or whatever. I
was going to ask that because you seem like a very independent person, and I don't know, strong personality, but definitely you have your ways. How did you get to the point where you were able to open up to another person to kind of share that stuff? Because I think that's hard for people to do, especially if it's a vulnerability in your business.
So I was always really interested in other people, right? I read How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Like
great book, yeah.
Great book, but also trying to solve like how to find, friends. And not necessarily find friends, but just how to be accepted, by people. And it's like, stop talking about yourself and ask some questions. It's like, great, I'm just going to ask questions. And I didn't really share anything of myself. Like I didn't share where I was vulnerable or concerned or
and that's the opposite of what we're doing here, pretty much. I mean, you've shared a lot.
Yeah, there's no way I could have shared what I'm sharing to hundreds or thousands of people, or even have developed this product, like actually shared my ideas, if I hadn't taken those landmark classes. One of them was there was an exercise where they asked us to write a letter to anybody, and it was something that some area of your life that was a breakdown, or some area that just wasn't going how you wanted it to go. And I wrote this letter, and I wrote it to my dad, and I raised my hand the next day to like share my letter, and there's like 200 people in the room, and all I could do at that moment, I knew I needed to share it, but I also knew there's a high likelihood that I wouldn't get picked. And I was really petrified of sharing this, but enough power to raise my hand. They called on me, and I'm like standing in the back, like just about to cry. And my dad had died 6 months prior.
Wow.
And so I wrote, and I hadn't written his obituary, and I felt really guilty about it. And so I'd written this letter to him, and I remember I'm standing. So they finally call me. They called me a couple of people before, and I'm looking at this piece of paper, and I'm just reading the "Dear Dad," and I just start crying, like snot coming out of my nose, just complete, like, like if you really, really cry, if you really like let it go, like that moment, or maybe you're with your your wife or your husband or your girlfriend, whatever, but I'm in front of like 250 people that I don't know, and this is like not what I do, right? My whole thing is like, I'm going to show you how great I am. I'm not going to be vulnerable. And so I end up reading the letter. I cry like the whole way through. There's people in the audience crying. And anyway, so what happened was my dad was an alcoholic, and my dad drank, and I never forgave my dad. And I still resented him for it. And I wanted to write him this letter, but I couldn't put the words onto paper because I was really conflicted how I felt, but I also didn't want to just write some generic obituary because it's like he meant so much more to me, and so I couldn't put together like the obituary because I wanted to make it impactful, because it's like, man, you live your life and then you write this like generic template of like, he did this, he left these people behind, moving on.
Right.
And so what came out was that I really resented him. I had a whole story about everything he had done, and in that moment, working with that coach, being up there in front of people, I forgave him. Like in an instant, it was gone. And we ended up talking for like 10, 15 minutes, but I had been holding on to this thing for like 20 years. I'm carrying this thing around every single day, all day long. My dad had just died. I didn't know how to deal with it. So it really, gave me peace after that. And that was like one of the best things I could ever ask for. Now, here's what's fucked up. So everyone comes up to me from the class, like I was like a rock star at that point. Like, oh my gosh, my dad this, my mom this. Thank you so much for sharing. That was so amazing. And, I was like being authentic. And then I was like, okay, thinking like the next day, and I was talking to people, and I'm like, okay, so if I want people to like me, I just have to really share myself, right? And they'll like me. So it's like I'm being inauthentic about being authentic, right? Like let me really share myself about what's going on in my life.
I don't know if I'd call that inauthentic though.
But I had an agenda. I was like I didn't know at that point like what I was doing to like try and win people over as like to be accepted. So I would like, share myself so they would, accept me. And later on I realized it was just like another thing, like, okay, well, I'm going to ask them questions, I'm going to do this because ultimately I'm trying to get after this other thing, but I don't know what it is that I'm doing.
I guess everyone wants to be accepted though. I don't know if I'd I'd say that's like a bad motive to have.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think knowing what it was I was doing it and why I was doing it gave me a lot more understanding of just who I am, because it's like I play all these tricks on myself. Like I do
Yeah.
this thing and then I try this other thing after when that happens, and that now becomes a pattern,
Yeah.
right? And you fast forward into your life, and I was having a son at that time, and I didn't want to like bring all my crap into his life. I wanted to kind of like have a fresh start for him. And so that experience really gave me, really gave me the power to be able to like actually share about myself, and share
Yeah.
authentically and understand, just being able to share.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that now. It's really powerful. Now we've
Yeah.
talked about some of the low points and some emotional points. Tell me about a high point. I don't want to depress people too much. Tell me about what happened with the U.S. Open.
Yeah, so it was right before my dad died, and probably like 6 months prior, and I was just crushing it at work. Right, I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life, like 10 times more than I had made like 2 years prior, 3 years prior, and my dad would always watch the U.S. Open. I grew up in Sonoma, California. We had one TV, and on Saturday he'd watch tennis, and U.S. Open was like one of his favorite tennis tournaments, and he would always fall asleep watching tennis. And I remember like trying to go up and try and change the channel, and always wake up and say, I was watching that. I'm like, Dad, you're sleeping, you're snoring. Like, let me watch my cartoons. And anyway, I'd been to the U.S. Open like the year before, and so I called up my dad and I was like, hey, I got like box seats for the U.S. Open. Why don't you come out? I'll pay for your flight. Come out for 3 or 4 days. We'll go to some games, and we ended up watching the finals, and we ended up like had these like fifth row seats or something ridiculous, and it was just this awesome night, and it was like this up and coming Argentinian guy versus one of the top guys, and it was just such a great experience, and I got to share it with my dad. And I live in New York, and he's in California, and it is like one of the last experiences I had with him. I mean, the last experience was San Francisco Giants were in the World Series, and it was the playoffs, and I flew out to San Francisco, and it's like, listen, let's go to the games. Like, I'll pay for your tickets. Let's go, because who knows when they're going to be, in the playoffs and the World Series. And that was the first year that they won the World Series, and it was the last time I saw my dad.
Wow.
We went to the first game. We ended up being on the front page of the sports section the next day. Like they had this picture, and it's just like everything in my life was kind of like working out at that moment. And he was gone, a week later or 2 weeks later, and like you can have money, but it's like what you do with that money or how you share it. And for anybody who's lost anybody or, a parent, like go and spend time with them, because that's what you're going to remember.
Yeah.
You'll remember that last 6 months or that last year. You don't remember like, hey, I really should have worked, or like, I'm glad I, did that little extra work, or I spent time with people that like I care about.
Yeah. No, that's true. What,
And then another high point was, my first $100,000 commission check. That was a good month.
So what did you do after you got that?
It's a direct deposit in an account. It just moves a number. I mean, it was more like just like I had reached the six figures in a month.
Yeah.
But at that point, it's just more money. Like it's just a number in my bank account.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to save it. You read Millionaire Next Door or read the books on wealth. It's not the guy who's driving around in the fancy car and has the country club memberships and everything. It's like the guy who you don't expect, who's not tied to how everybody else has to go through life.
Right.
So that was a great groundbreaking book as far as kind of money mindset, The Millionaire Next Door. But yeah, it went to my bank account. I mean, I ended up buying, an apartment in New York City and
What
buying.
advice, let me ask you this. What
Yeah.
advice did your dad give you growing up that's influenced you?
See, my dad always believed in my brother and I. He in his what I remember him saying, which I just kind of thought that's how life is. He said, like, you can do anything you want. You can do anything you set your mind to, or work hard to get done. Like, you can do anything you want, and he supported us. Like, he was always at our little league games and our swim meets and our soccer games, and was checking in our schoolwork, and he was very active, and he was our a huge fan. But I think fundamentally just that belief system that we can do we can do anything, right? Like whatever it is we wanted to do. And I didn't realize how important that is for a kid or for an adult or for a person, or just how potentially rare that is, that it's like not every family or parent is saying that to their kid.
Yeah. So what's some bad advice you've gotten that you found that has not been true?
uh I think, if I look at, like, say, the selling environment, I always look outside when I'm trying to think. And sorry, that's distracting, but you ever notice that, like, people's eyes will, like, wander when you're doing an interview? I just catch myself doing it because I need to be here with you guys. I mean, bad advice. Hey, you need to make more phone, like in the selling environment, you need to make more phone calls. You need to hit the phones. You need more meetings. It's my feeling was, like, I want a more effective or efficient way to get the outcome or the desired outcome, which was, closing a sale. And, just because I did more calls or, more action didn't mean I'd get more, I might get more results, but didn't mean that was the best use of my time or the most efficient, effective way to go about it. And a lot of sales management will go out there and, like, you guys need to go on 10 meetings a week, right? But they're measuring the wrong things. They're measuring something that you can measure, but it's not necessarily the right action that could be taken. Like cold calling, the guy could not be at his desk. Most likely, he's not going to be at the desk. Most likely, he's not going to answer his phone because these buyers, these decision makers are looking at your caller ID. There's a gatekeeper, or they're not going to return your voicemail.
Obviously, breakthrough email came out of such a frustrating experience with cold calling. Do
Yeah.
you remember one of those frustrating experiences just pushed you over the edge?
Uh,
I'm sure there's a lot of them.
Have you ever cold called?
Yeah,
It's just constant rejection.
yeah.
It's just like one after the other after the other. I mean, I had, one guy who was like, who just started questioning me, like, hey, because we'd say, like, we're calling on behalf of Oracle. It was like our way to, because we weren't really calling from Oracle. We were calling from, a much smaller company. But there was a reason, and the guy's like, are you in the Oracle office? And I lied to him. I'm like, yeah, I'm in the office. He's like, okay, which office are you in? Like, I was in, because I'd been in the San Diego office. I'm in the San Diego office. And it's like this combative thing where, like, you're a telemarketer, right, to businesses. And it just feels like crap all day long. And I was always just in the mindset of, like, there has got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to get meetings. And then once you get in meetings, it's like there's got to be a better way than just pitching and writing a proposal and then, in the follow-up game. And there was, and I found it, and then I kind of distilled that down to, like, the least number of steps so I could get the outcome, but not really work as hard to do it.
Yeah. I have one last question, Bryan. Before I ask it, I wanted to hear more about your business now, what you're most excited about, what's going on lately for Breakthrough Email.
So we're doing a launch probably in the next couple of weeks. We just kind of keep deferring it, but we're getting to a point where we're actually going to make the product available 24/7, right? So people can go through the product, through the training, whenever they want. And what I'm really excited about, first off, I'm excited about the results people are getting, right? Like it's working for people. People that take the action, who go through the course, like it's working. I'm excited to do kind of more research on like how people learn within that environment. I mean, that's something that like just excites me because it's like it's its own ecosystem of like being able to help people, like Khan Academy, like you can test stuff. So I'm really excited about that. And I have some new content that I'm going to be coming out with, and I'm really excited about sharing that as well with people.
What have you found that has worked or hasn't worked in the learning environment with breakthrough email?
Well, I think that you have to like bite-sized chunks. So start off small.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a sequence. I people like to consume content in different ways, whether it's a video or a transcript or so that's worked really well. And I think it's just you just helping people get to the point where they get that first small win, so then they keep with it, and doing everything so they see the results, and changing that mindset from, hey, it's all about me writing this email and my company and what we do and how we do it and why we think it's great, to the other person saying, oh man, this is an opportunity for me. I want to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
And that's tough for people.
So where can people, just give people the website, or where can people find more? What's the best place to check it out?
breakthroughemail.com. And just, at that point, you can go and get the template. Just, enter your name and email. You'll get the template. There's also a bunch of other techniques, like, how to find a customer's budget. And there's all kinds of great stuff. What to do, when somebody's not returning your emails. How to escape the follow-up game, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's all great stuff, and everyone can use it, no matter if they're with a big company, small company. I mean, we all use email on an everyday basis, and you always want to get to, someone that the influencer, I guess you could say. My last question, actually, I have two questions. I'm looking at the time. We're over. This is.
I'm also looking at my computer. It says 4 minutes. So
we're good.
If it dies on you, you'll know.
We're good. We're good in 4 minutes. I really want to ask, at the end, I want to ask one last question. And for you, there's a lot of stuff that you talked about. And what I think of is the impact. So when your kids watch this, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, this interview, what lessons do you want them to take out of this, or anything in general? What words do you want to make sure to instill in your kids?
Yeah, so I think that if you work hard and you believe in yourself, you can do whatever you want. You can create whatever you want. So like this was just an idea that I had about just over a year ago, and now it's a business. Now I have customers. Now it generates income. Now those customers are getting customers, and they're getting big results. And but it's a process too. Like you're going to fail, or it's not going to work out how you want it to work out, and you have to be okay with failure, and you have to know that it doesn't have to be perfect, but you just have to keep iterating on top of that, and keep creating.
Yeah. So my last question, I had it written down, and I thought it was interesting that when you went to Tim Ferriss's kimono, why did you decide not to write a book?
I just got an email from somebody yesterday. They're like, "Hey, I'd love to, when you're writing a book, I'd love to read it." And it's like, oh, I'm not writing a book anytime soon. Writing a book is a process, and you have to be clear. I think what I learned is that you have to be clear on what's the reason you're writing a book, right? There's content. It could be a PDF. It could be an ebook. It could be a digital course. It could be a speech. It could be, a podcast, whatever. So what is my motivation to write a book? Is it to be a bestseller? Is it to, sell? I right now I don't have the motivation, and I value books so much that I really want to knock it out of the park when I when I do write a book. And, I'm just kind of really busy right now with everything else I've got going on. But, at some point I will write a book, and, something that, I'll be able to share with everyone.
Nice. Bryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's
Yeah.
always a pleasure talking to you. And everyone should check out breakthroughemail.com. It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to, hear from everybody. And if anybody has any, wants to reach out to me or has ideas, wants to talk about email, Bryan, Bryan at breakthroughemail.com, or, just go and download the template at breakthroughemail.com.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Bryan.
All right. See you, buddy.